Welcome back to The Full View. Let's look at the turbulent politics in Johannesburg now. ActionSA says it is reconsidering its participation in the DA's moonshot pact because of the party's attitude during the election of a new mayor for Johannesburg on Friday. Kabelo Gwamanda from Jama-ah was elected with the help of the ANC and the EFF. A previous governing bloc, including the DA and ActionSA, was not able to unite behind any one candidate. Beaumont is the national chairperson of ActionSA. He joins us now. Thank you, Mr. Beaumont. From what we know, the DA wanted you to vote for Dr. Palatse, but you put forward a candidate as ActionSA, Funzi Ngobeni, and you couldn't agree. And because of the squabbling, the other guys won. Is that the long and short of it?
Well, I suppose so, but if you won't mind me colouring in some of the detail there,
Sure.
ActionSA's candidate was put forward by ourselves, of course, but with the IFP, the Freedom Front Plus, the ACDP and the UIM, parties that all used to work with the Democratic Alliance. And we had actually called the DA and the PA to a meeting the day before and said we can't go into this council meeting divided. If we do that with two candidates, we increase the likelihood of an ANC or EFF candidate rising. And unfortunately, the Democratic Alliance took an approach of saying if it wasn't their candidate, then it was going to be an ANC candidate, and that was where they drew the line.
The argument of the DA presumably stays the same, that it got more votes than anybody else in this bloc or this would-be coalition. So it should be able to lead. People like their policies. I was looking at the numbers, just as a reminder. ANC got 34%, the DA 26%, and ActionSA 16%. And I will ask this of the DA as well. Why insist on a mayor? But for ActionSA, why insist on your mayor with 16%? Why do you think that is valid?
Well, actually, we didn't insist on that. When we asked the DA to a meeting, we came there with the intention of uniting behind any candidate that could achieve a majority. And we deeply respect the principle of the larger party leading. And that is why we have supported those arrangements in many municipalities up until now. I think the important thing, though, when you talk about an entitlement like that for the larger party, comes with a great responsibility. And that responsibility is to keep a majority together. Yeah. And the DA's approach to the Patriotic Alliance, who have the kingmaker status in Johannesburg, has been to alienate them over many months now, to the point that there simply wasn't a majority behind the DA candidate, even if all of us rallied behind them. That was when it came up that an ActionSA candidate could have a majority. And that was when the DA effectively said they would rather have the ANC.
Okay, so help me understand. So that would have been the compromise that would have kept the PA on board and given you the numbers?
Absolutely. So the coalition partners I mentioned earlier and the Patriotic Alliance were willing to rally behind Funzi Ngobeni. And at that point in time, if the Democratic Alliance had lent their 71 seats to the equation, we wouldn't be staring at a mayoralty of an Jama-ah candidate. We'd be talking about the continuation of our multi-party coalition.
Are you saying, quickly, correct me if I'm wrong, because we are going to get a response from the DA, that even if you had supported Dr. Palatse, the numbers wouldn't have been there?
Correct. So without the PA and all of us, had we all united behind Dr. Palatse, she would have received 130 votes, when 136 is what is required for a majority. And during the discussions we held the night before, it was patently obvious that the DA did not have a majority, and yet they expected everyone to rally behind them for a cosmetic kind of appearance thing. And we just obviously indicated that we need to work to build a majority, because ultimately that's the only way you can fulfill the criteria of the moonshot pact and keep the ANC and EFF out.
Very quickly, the DA Solium Zamanga said you had approached the small parties first. You only came to the DA at the last minute, and that there was no guarantee for the DA that this would be a solid coalition that would last. Is that true?
Well, most certainly not. I think what the DA had done is collapse coalition talks. They then unilaterally announced Dr. Palatse as the candidate without consulting anyone else. And that required all of the rest of the parties at that point to start galvanizing behind one another, which is exactly what we did. And I would argue to Mr. Msimanga that if he would like to talk about the stability and service delivery and good governance concept of this equation, why would the DA have been culpable in restoring an ANC and EFF mayor? Surely it's best for the residents of Johannesburg that we try to pull something together for their benefit.
Mr. Beaumont, very quickly, you say that the moonshot pact now, which would be against the ANC and EFF in national elections next year, is in danger, or is in ICU. Can it be saved?
Well, it can, and I think that's the point, but it's going to require a complete 180-degree turn from the Democratic Alliance, because they have announced just 2 weeks ago this moonshot pact, whose stated intention is to prevent an ANC and EFF government in 2024. And here you have an actual, not a theoretical, an actual ANC and EFF government on the biggest platform in local government 2 weeks later, and the Democratic Alliance opts rather for the return of the ANC and EFF than supporting one of its own partners in the pact. There's got to be a change from the Democratic Alliance for this thing to have any chance at all.
All right, thank you. That was Michael Beaumont, National Chairperson of ActionSA, talking about the fallout after another Jama-ah candidate was elected as mayor of Johannesburg. That was with the support of the ANC and EFF.